So, let's talk about One Piece. I've been a fan of anime for around a decade now, but only in the latter half of that decade have I come to love it as much as I do, and throughout that time, I'd always heard of a little thing called One Piece. Despite the good I'd heard about it, I was understandably very intimidated by a series that was nearing 1,000 episodes at the time. So my plan was to just kind of absorb information about it through secondhand sources, so I could at least have some knowledge on what was going on. However, my best friend, who you've probably seen on this channel if you watch some of my past videos, this guy, had other plans. I was hanging out at his place before he sat me down on the couch and said, "You're watching One Piece and you're going to like it." To which I responded, "Okay." And it did not take long for me to become invested in the show and started watching it in my own time, rather than only watch it when he was around. I was hooked by Arlong Park, weeped for the first time at the end of Drum Island, and became a fan for life when Alabasta came and went. But at the end of the day, the question came to me, who was my favorite character in the series? At the time of writing the script, I've only started Marineford, aka not even halfway through the story yet, so maybe my answer is a bit premature, for lack of a better word, but I feel pretty confident that by the time I get to Wano, the answer will remain the same. And in order to explain why this particular character is my favorite, we need to start elsewhere. Let me explain. Let's discuss the opposite of the ocean, space. Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, made popular a term that has been thrown around everywhere to try to justify why it did what it did, and that term is subverting expectations. I know you probably just rolled your eyes at that term alone, but allow me to elaborate. Subverting expectations is not inherently a bad thing, despite what some people will try to tell you. Hell, technically every plot twist in media history can be labeled as an expectation subversion, where you had preconceptions about one thing, but then the plot revealed it to be something else. In The Last Jedi's case, they used the term to excuse how all over the place the plot and characters were, making the movie not only boring, but also incomprehensible, especially when played side by side with the other two movies, and even more especially when played side by side with all of Star Wars. So what does this have to do with One Piece? Well, let's talk about the Marines. More specifically, the Marines in the East Blue. The first Marine we ever meet is technically Kobe, who wasn't even a Marine at the time, but rather had the dream to become one, a dream that our beloved main character supported. And then pretty much immediately after, we are introduced to Helmeppo and his father, Captain Morgan, the former being a complete asshat. Yes, I know he gets better, but that's not the point. And the other being a man who believes might makes right, and wants everyone around him to worship him as though he were a god. The Marines under them aren't bad, but we're still left with the impression of the Marines being more corrupt the higher up they are in the food chain, and this is further exemplified by Lieutenant Fullbody, who, while not exactly evil, was still an arrogant asshole both before, during, and after Baratier. Then we meet Nezumi, a corrupt Marine who helped bolster the threat of Arlong, and is arguably worse than the other examples. So at the end of the day, the impression is that the Marines and the world government are a very corrupt group, with the only exceptions being the grunts with no power. And then after Arlong Park, we head to the last stop before the Grand Line, also known as Logtown, the birthplace of Goldie Roger, and where he was executed. You probably already know where I'm going with this, but just let me speak further. This is where we learn about a certain Marine by the name of Captain Smoker, the man solely responsible for most pirates in the East Blue not making it to the Grand Line, guarding Logtown with ferocity. And just looking at him and hearing his voice for the first time tells us that not only is he someone to be feared, but is seemingly no different to the Marines of the past. And then the next scene happens. A girl is running along the street carrying a cone of ice cream, not paying attention when Smoker walks in front of her. The treat spills on his pants, and everybody's reaction is reminiscent to the civilians in Shellstown, dreading Smoker's wrath. And then...
Please don't hurt me! I'm sorry! Please don't hurt us!
I'm sorry. My silly pants have eaten all your ice cream. Here, go buy yourself 5 scoops. Let's go.
Sir! What the fuck?
Watching this for the first time, my jaw dropped. Up until then, I had thought that the Marines would all be the same, or at the very least, similar to the previous examples, and perhaps serving just to highlight Kobe's journey to become an admiral and avoiding corruption along the way. But Smoker turned out to be different in the best way possible. And that goes back to what I was saying about subverting expectations. Smoker is technically the main antagonist of this arc, and every other antagonist before had been basically evil for the sake of being evil, with the only kind of exception being Arlong with his ideals of fishmen being the superior species, suggesting a tragic backstory of some kind, but is ultimately not revealed. But Smoker proved to be something else entirely, being one of the best examples of good expectation subversion that I have seen in a long time. Another thing I love about Smoker is that he pretty much introduced to us, in the series at least, the concept of something that many writers nowadays completely forget about or just flat out ignore, and that's the moral gray. Things can never be just black and white. There must be those characters who walk the line between being a hero and being a villain. If you just have a plain black and white moral system, you run the risk of making your story more uninteresting. Oh hey Ruby, what are you doing today?
I'm just going to be super pissed if you all finally decide to give up the moment I switch sides.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So just by concept alone, Smoker became so gosh darn likable that I was surprised at myself by how quickly I came to like him. He was a Marine, yes, but he seemed to perfectly embody the ideal Marine that Kobe was talking about. He wasn't on the side of the Straw Hats, no, but he wasn't an evil person. However, concept and being present in one story arc alone is not enough to become a favorite. Well, to me at least. And before I go further, keep in mind I was still relatively new to One Piece at the time, so I just kind of assumed Smoker was one of those one-time antagonists that we'd never truly go back to. The closest thing I thought we'd get to seeing him again would be perhaps in one of the Wanted poster episodes that we just had before the arc began. And thankfully, I could not have been happier to be wrong. Smoker's reappearance in Alabasta took me completely off guard. Not only was his reappearance coupled with the introduction of Ace, another character I quickly grew to love, but it also proved to me that Oda was not going to forget about these characters so easily, that no matter how much time passes and how many more new characters are introduced, these characters are going to remain relevant, and none of this is bringing up just how awesome Smoker is as a character personality-wise. Yes, he is ruthless when it comes to pirates like Luffy, but as his introduction in another scene I'll get to later proves, he is compassionate towards others, determined to deliver justice, and is not blind to the realities of this world. One of my favorite tropes is when a morally gray character who's on the side of the antagonist starts to become disillusioned to the side he's on, and starts acting just a bit more rebellious. And while this doesn't exactly pertain to Smoker entirely, it is this trope that gave us the scene that cemented Smoker as my favorite character in One Piece.
If you disobey the brass, you could get court-martialed.
Well, better that than live a lie. We didn't take Crocodile down. My subordinates in tears because we couldn't. Hey, you. Could you pass on a personal message from me to the old geezers at HQ?
Don't do it, Smoker!
Tell them I said go to hell.
There are no words that can describe my hype when the episode ended there. Just like that, Smoker became half of the reason why the Alabasta arc's ending still has not been topped for me, and considering we have Enies Lobby, Sabaody Archipelago, and Marineford with their creatively stunning and heart-wrenching endings, that is high praise coming from me. Oh, and the other half is obviously the Farewell to Vivi, which had me bawling my eyes out while hearing the first OP play again, but that's neither here nor there. Smoker does appear later in the story, I know, with a small part in Marineford and a probably big part in an arc that I haven't gotten to yet, aka Punk Hazard, so I likely haven't even scratched the surface with how awesome he is. Should I have made this once I caught up to the series proper? I mean, maybe, but as I said before, I feel pretty confident that my opinion on this won't change. I mean, when you introduce characters like Whitebeard, who could flip entire islands with his trimmer fruit, Shanks, who ended a war by simply marching, or even any of the Straw Hat Pirates, and my favorite character is consistently Smoker, yeah, you know Oda did something incredible in my eyes. But at the end of the day, this is all just my opinion. If you have a favorite character, be sure to comment down below and let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and till next time, guys. See ya.